Alright, you made it so far. Once we're done with the material, now we'll look at how to do the final render of the scene. We'll also set up a depth of field on our camera. Now, before I get started, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave your thoughts below on the comment section. Okay, let's go into top view and select our camera. Now I'm going to enable depth of field on my camera. And I need to adjust my target distance so that I have the area that I want to be in focus. So I want my foreground to be blurred and this armchair to be in focus. So as you can see in this camera, there are these three lines. The middle line means this is where most of the focus is going to be, and then it starts to fall off until these lines, and everything else will be blurred. Okay, so this is pretty wide for our, because we have a really tight shot. So I'm going to reduce the aperture. As you can see, if I reduce the aperture, the area that are going to be in focus is going to be smaller. So I'll set it to about 4, and that should do the trick. Now onto the render setting. First thing is the common tab. Let's go back to the custom. I'm going to lock the image aspect ratio, and then I'm going to increase the height to about 2000. Now let's go to the scene tab. This is where you pick up how clean you want your render to be. I like to use the noise limit instead of the pass limit and time limit, but it's up to you. You can just go ahead and set it up to be at 1 hour and see how clean it is. And if it's not clean enough, you can again go ahead and keep resuming to render. Okay, but I like to use the noise limit, so I'll set the noise limit to 4, and we're going to turn on denoising, turn on Corona high quality denoising, and the default value works pretty well. Let's go to the performance tab. I want to talk a little bit about GI versus AA balance. So if you have a lot of depth of field and motion blur in your scene, you want this value to be lower so that it cleans the noise on those depth of field much faster. But if you don't have a lot of depth of field or motion blur, you can keep this number higher. 16 works pretty much fine for most shots, but if you have like a vignette shot where there's a lot of bokeh effect and only little area that's in focus, you want to set this down to about 4 or even 2. So on this our shot, I'm going to set it at about 8. Down to the UHD cache. As it explains, it's easy. For still frames, you use the first one, still frames, and if you're doing the animation, if the camera is moving, you do animation flicker free, which is a little bit slower, but it does not create any flicker in your GI. Down to the render elements tab, we're just going to add in some render elements. I'm going to add just some common ones that I generally use. Reflection and refraction paths. Most likely we don't have any refraction in our scene, so I'll probably not use that. I'm going to use indirect light and direct light. I'm going to add some translucency for our curtain. Let's go down here. I'm going to add both C masking ID and C masking mask. Those are the masks that we can use to select our object later in Photoshop. Sorry, not the mask, we need the wire color and source color and C text map. Okay, now with the C text map, you need to set up a Corona ambient occlusion map. So click on the no map and pick up Corona AL. Now I'll just open my material editor. Let me drag my material there as an instance and set the max distance to about 50. Now what this does, it gives you ambient occlusion, so all these corner areas where one objects meet another or creases, there will be a little black line in there, which we can use to composite later to create some extra detail. All right, that's pretty much it. Now you can go ahead and hit render and watch your render come to life. Okay, we are on our final stage. We'll look at how to do our post-production on our raw render. This is what the final effect is. So that's our raw render, and after the post-production, this is our final image. It is just a little bit more brighter and more contrasty, and it actually looks much better than our raw render. So I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. Let me delete this layer here, and I'm going to bring in all the other passes. Just make sure you drag it on top of the image and bring in as an alpha channel. All right, now I'm going to select these mask layers and I'm going to put it on the top, and let me turn them off. I'm going to turn pretty much all the layers except for our base layers. All right, now first thing I'm going to do is bring in my reflection pass. I'll put it right after the light mix, and I'll turn that on, and I'll change the blending mode to screen. Now, if you turn that on and off, you can already see our reflections increase by a lot. So I'm going to reduce the opacity down to about 50, which should be pretty good. Okay, next thing I want to do is bring in my sun. The sunlight pass, which is gonna give us that extra boost to our sunlight. I'll set that to screen as well, and I think it's a bit too bright, so we will tone it down a little bit as well. Now, as you can see the difference, it's just giving it that extra little kick to our sunlight. Now let's, I don't think we would need our direct pass, so I will just turn that off. Same thing with the indirect, I'm not gonna use that. I have a copy of light mix here, which I'll delete as well. Let's bring the environment down, and let me change that to screen as well. And I'll reduce the opacity as we did before. Now we don't want our shadows to get too bright, so I'm just going to reduce that down quite a lot. It's just going to make a little bit of difference. All good. Now we've got our C text map, which is going to give us that ambient occlusion effect. And I'm going to set the blending mode to multiply. Now if you look at it, it looks a little bit dirty. Now if you look at around here, it looks like something's really muddy, looks really dirty. So what I can do, I'll set this back to normal, and I'm going to add in a levels adjustment, and I'll right click and create clipping mask. Now what I can do is I can just crunch those blacks and only get a really thin line, so that way it doesn't look very messy. Now I can set it back to multiply, and it should look much better, giving that extra level of detail. Okay, let's turn on our pendant light. Same thing with this, set it to screen, and I think this one is pretty much okay at 100. Yeah, I'll just leave the opacity. All right, so these are our basic passes. Now we're gonna do some color adjustments. Let's just go ahead and first boost up our painting, because it's looking a little dull at the moment. So I'm going to find my C masking ID, and if I go and select the magic wand tool and select that, and I'm going to create levels adjustment, and when it's selected, if you click on levels, it will already create the mask for you, so it's much easier. Bring the white slider, we should boost it up a little bit. Let me go back again to my mask, select that again, and now I want to create hue and saturation, because I think the blue on this is a bit too much saturated, so I'll just tone the saturation down a little bit. That's pretty good. Let's bring these two labels down. It's looking okay. I want to darken the floor a little bit, so I'll repeat the same process. Select the magic wand tool, and I will add in another levels adjustment, and then not white slider this time, the black slider. Now as you can see, there is one little issue we're having is around here, right away the plant is out of focus. That is one of the problem with using these C masking IDs, that it cannot select anything that's around the out of focus objects. So what we'll have to do is we have to cheat a little bit and just go ahead and paint this mask ourselves. So I'm going to select a black color and make sure you are on the masking layer, and I'm just, sorry, we need the white layer, white color, and just paint around a little bit, and that should just fix it. And because this is the plan, we don't really mind if it's a little bit too darker, so we're okay. I'll probably paint a little bit around here as well, just to get rid of that extra little thing here. Maybe a little bit here. All right, that looks right. Now what I'm gonna do, hit Control Shift Alt and E, which will merge everything that we've done so far and bring it up to one layer. And now I can go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. Now we'll do our final adjustments here. Just give it some balance. So I'm just going to, because I think at the moment it looks a little too warm. So I'm just going to put the temperature down a little bit. Don't want to go too much because it is daytime. So I'll probably do like -7. I'm going to bring my contrast up a little bit. Let's get the shadow darkened up a bit. I'll bring up the saturation a little because I think the image is getting a little bit too desaturated. I'm going to bring up the clarity. Let's play with the blacks and whites a little. Okay. Let's go into the details section. I'm going to bring the sharpening up. Let's see, about 10. Let's see how it looks. So that was the before and this is the after. And I'll go to effects and add some vignetting. All right, I think that's pretty good. I'm just gonna go hit OK. Now one last thing I want to do, I'm gonna try and give it a little bit of glow to it. So let me make a copy of this layer by hitting Control J, and I'll go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. Just give it some decent amount of blur, and I'll change the blending mode to screen. Now it's really blown out at the moment, but that's okay. Let's reduce the opacity down. If you turn it back on and off, you can see it gives a little bit of that atmospheric effect, which I really like. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Sorry. Okay, that's pretty much the basic way of like taking your render and just adding some color correction and adding some of your render passes and making your image look better. This is very basic. You can easily spend a couple of hours tweaking your renders and making it look much better. But for this tutorial, I'll just keep it at this. Let me know if you guys want to see more post-production tutorial. I'll make more videos in the future. I'll make sure I'll do some good post-production tutorial in the future as well. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See you guys next time.